Indiana manufacturers Coca-Cola Consolidated is putting $35 million into a glass bottling capability in Indianapolis that hasn't existed at that facility since 1968. Indiana's new CTE diploma law has a hard class of 2029 deadline, and a structural funding flaw is widening the gap between suburban and rural manufacturers right now. And GM's $3.5 billion Kokomo EV battery plant is still paused, with new details emerging on what that means for the workforce pipeline built around it. Three developments, one brief. Let's go. So, Coca-Cola Consolidated has announced a $35 million investment to add a glass bottling line at its Indianapolis manufacturing facility, a site that's run only non-glass formats and aluminum cans since glass bottling was discontinued there in 1968. So that puts Indianapolis among only three U.S. Coca-Cola Systems glass bottling facilities. Construction is expected to begin in late 2026, with operational ramp up realistically landing in 2028. Now, here's the analytical angle that most coverage is missing. This is a format capability leap. It's not a routine expansion. One possibility worth watching, Consolidated hasn't confirmed SKU plans, is whether the line targets domestic glass contour bottles competing with Mexican Coke imports. The premium there is partly format and partly cane sugar. So glass alone won't capture the full gap. But even a partial play in that direction has margin and supply chain implications that go well beyond the $35 million headline. And there's a second buried detail worth tracking. Consolidated's November 2025 $2.4 billion share repurchase made it fully independent from the Coca-Cola Company. Management is now directing capital on its own terms. This glass investment may indicate a longer-term strategic de-emphasis of certain PET volumes, which puts this announcement in direct tension with Consolidated's existing stake in Southeastern, a plastic bottle manufacturing cooperative. You tracking? Payback case here hinges on premium price mix from restaurants, stadiums, and specialty retail holding through a multi-year ramp. If you're anywhere in the Midwest beverage supply chain, don't wait until 2028 to assess whether your customers are repositioning toward premium format contracts. Now, Indiana's new high school graduation requirements enacted under HEA 1002 in 2023 are scaling fast. Schools and employers are already building work-based learning placements ranging from Corvette C8 parts supplier internships through Center Grove to the in-frame Central Indiana apprenticeship at Ivy Tech Indianapolis, where employers including Red Gold, Roche, and 3M are paying students $21 an hour or more. The class of 2029 mandatory statewide deadline makes this a hard capacity constraint. It's not a pilot program. Here's the structural flaw that the optimistic Corvette and cattle narrative is obscuring. Under the CSA mechanism, every student who routes through a non-school provider takes their CTE grant dollars with them, which means districts with thinner enrollment and fewer in-house placements lose revenue precisely when they're being asked to expand work-based learning capacity. The Indiana Fiscal Policy Institute flagged this dynamic in its analysis of HEA 1002. Rural districts face the sharpest exposure. They could lose CTE grant revenue precisely when rural manufacturing communities most need the pipeline. The practical result? Well-resourced suburban districts are scaling faster. Manufacturers outside the Indianapolis and Hamilton County corridors are at real risk of arriving at 2028 to find the best pre-credentialed candidates already locked up by employers who moved earlier. The class of 2029 deadline is not too far away. Get someone on your team engaged with the school districts in your geography before that window closes. The GM's Kokomo pause has now run long enough that the workforce architecture around it, Ivy Tech's ITEP program, Kokomo area CTE placements, is itself becoming a stranded asset question. General Motors paused its $3.5 billion EV battery plant in Kokomo, citing cooling EV demand, and the construction and supply chain community is sharpening the picture of what a sustained pause actually means for Howard County. Now, here's the strategic contradiction no prior coverage has fully addressed. Indiana built a visible portion of its workforce development architecture, including Ivy Tech's ITEP program and Kokomo area CTE placements, around the assumption of major EV battery facility employment. A sustained GM pause puts that pre built pipeline into a holding pattern. The same high school and community college partners who oriented curriculum toward EV battery manufacturing now face a pivot question. Can they retool fast enough to serve other advanced manufacturing sectors if GM's timeline slips further? And this compounds for Howard County suppliers and contractors who priced workloads around the construction start. The pause lands on top of aluminum and input cost pressures already hitting manufacturers across the region. So watch GM's next quarterly earnings call for any updated capital allocation guidance. A further delay or formal cancellation would trigger renegotiation of supplier construction contracts already in that pipeline. If your business has any implicit dependency on that project moving forward, the time to map your exposure is right now, not when GM makes the next announcement. So here's where these three different kind of story threads converge today. Indiana is simultaneously betting on premium formats, workforce pipelines, and EV scale manufacturing, but the timelines, funding structures, and demand assumptions behind each of those bets are visibly out of sync. A glass line that doesn't reach full operation until 2028, a workforce law with a structural funding flaw that widens the geographic talent gap before it closes, and a $3.5 billion anchor project in pause with a CTE pipeline built around it going nowhere fast. For your morning huddle, here are three concrete questions and actions. First, if your CapEx pro forma assumes premium beverage volume growth, EV battery supply chain ramp, or a Hoosier workforce pipeline scaling on schedule, pressure test each of those line items against the three developments in today's brief. All three of those assumptions just got a little bit weaker. Second, contact the school districts in your geography and establish a work-based learning partnership before the class of 2029 deadline makes you a late mover. Third, map explicitly which supplier relationships or workforce bets depend on the GM Kokomo timeline. Then build a contingency for the scenario where EV demand recovery takes longer than the current consensus assumes. Bottom line, Indiana is simultaneously betting on premium formats, workforce pipelines, and EV scale manufacturing. But the timelines, funding structures, and demand assumptions behind each of those bets are now visibly out of sync. And plant leaders who don't audit their own dependencies on those assumptions are running and operating blind. Now, I don't actually run a manufacturing facility. I am the CEO of Tactical Energy Group. We're an Indiana based energy management technology provider. And one of the most important things I can do is stay on top of all the dynamics that affect the economics of making things in Indiana so we can consistently improve the solutions we bring to the manufacturing community. So, what am I doing here with TEG Daily Indiana Manufacturing News? I am staying on top of the essential developments and I'm bringing them to you. And I seriously hope that they're useful to you. So go ahead and share this brief with your team, subscribe, follow me, and let's get some daily updates going for you, just like this one.